together, says the
Says the
Lord.
Lord. Yeah, that's it. That's the song. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark David Smith, and there's Larry Segari, right along with. Oh, well, that's a different view. Oh,
He looks like a chair.
no, I think he's in the closet again.
Oh no.
He's back in the closet. David's back in the closet.
I thought maybe he was a chairman.
I'm getting an echo somewhere. Why am I getting an echo? All right, there we go. No?
Yes.
Hold up. I'm getting an echo from you. Hello? Hello? Yep. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. I just muted you and no, you're not now for some reason. There's Dave.
Shalom.
Dave, you look like you're in the closet.
No, I'm actually in an office.
In an office, okay. Well, you know those louvered doors behind you are like doors they put on closets, and you have to open the door and everything.
It's a window.
I see.
A window, yes.
Anyway.
Let me raise the volume here.
We're back, and I'm not getting so whatever. I was getting feedback, but hey, hi everybody. David's here, and Larry's here, and I'm here. And we're back. So this show's called Let Us Reason Together, and it's based on Isaiah 1:18. Come now and let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are as scarlet, they will be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they will be like wool. So what we have on this show, indifferent than other shows, is we have a vehemently professed former Christian, a Jew with a messianic vision, and a former Catholic down there in Larryland. And we all go on a talk show together. What do we talk about? Well, let's see. Last week's topic was what we know about the history of our belief system since Yeshua walked on the earth. And so we're kind of continuing morphing into maybe parenthetically a part of last week's, which kind of morphs into how did a Jewish belief system get turned into Christianity? Whoa, heavy topic right there. Heavy topic, because in our sect of our belief system, we think we have all the answers. So it's kind of like we started this way, it morphed into a whole nother religion, and now we're trying to bring it back to what it was. That's the way I look at it, kind of. But before we get started, I'm not so sure, but because Larry's on the show, I kind of keep tabs on some of these things. We want to acknowledge that yesterday was the Feast of Our Lady Virgin of Guadalupe Day. This day honors when the Virgin Mary miraculously appeared to a peasant on a hilltop in Mexico City on December 12th, 1531. So in honor of Larry, our former Catholic, I want to acknowledge that.
Well, thank you, but that's a Mexican thing.
Oh, it's a Mexican thing?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we go into Mexico. Hi, all you Mexicans down there that are watching the show.
I think I saw an old black and white movie about that, and I thought it was sweet.
Sweet. Oh, cool.
Well, how come last week you didn't mention it was St. Nicholas Day?
I didn't know. I didn't know that.
It's not on my calendar.
And I still didn't get anything in my shoes.
You what?
I still didn't get anything in my shoes.
Okay.
Well, at least I didn't get any coal, though.
I have the St. Nicholas Day not for another week and a half.
No. St. Nicholas Day is December 6th, where
Oh, it is?
all the little kids put all their shoes out the night before, and St. Nicholas comes to visit. And if you were a good kid, you get a little gift. And if you were a bad kid, you get a lump of coal. Of course,
Okay.
coal's
Well,
pretty good.
and so what country is that in?
Northern Europe, the
Northern.
Scandinavian countries.
I see. Okay.
And that's where you get Santa Claus from, St. Nicholas.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So he really was a person, this
Oh, yes. He was
Oh,
he was
yeah.
a bishop in Turkey.
around what year?
I think around 200.
1531.
Don't mess up the Virgin with other things. It was in the 4th century, I think, 3rd or 4th century. And he was known as a very kind person. And he was rich, but he was a leader of the church in that area. And he used to try and help the orphans.
Yeah.
And even women who didn't have any, what do you call it? When you get married, you give the husband a dowry. Those women that didn't have dowries, he would pay for their dowry so they could get married. So he was a nice guy.
And if you want to know more about dowries, you could watch Downton Abbey. That pretty much explains dowries and all that good stuff.
Right. Yeah. Dowry Abbey. Yeah.
Dowry Abbey. That's right.
Well,
all right.
I guess we're kind of talking about how Jewish belief systems get turned into Christianity, but I wanted to mention that I see a historical side to it and a spiritual side to it. So we all know the historical side to it is that we have as belief in Yeshua as the Messiah started to grow. Of course, it began in Judea. And it was almost all Jews. It was primarily Jews. And then as Paul started to spread the message throughout Western Asia and even curving around into parts of what we know are Europe today, southeastern Europe, it just was, there were fewer and fewer Jews and more Gentiles. The more Gentiles are coming in. And it's still in the 1st century and even part of the 2nd century, it's still primarily a Messianic Jewish, just another sect of Judaism, along with the other 19 or 20 or 21 sects of Judaism.
Yeah.
But we get this all very important lesson from Acts chapter 15, the Jerusalem Council. What do we do about all these Gentiles that are coming in? Do we have to make them convert to Judaism? And they made the very important decision, and it was a good decision. They don't have to convert to Judaism. The men don't have to get circumcised. All they have to do is believe in Jesus. Now, I think the problem we have is that it wasn't stated, but it was understood that nothing was precluding Gentiles from going into the Jewish roots of their faith. Anyone who thinks that the two separated at that point and weren't allowed to be together just doesn't understand the implicit reasoning that, well, we're not going to make them convert to believe in Jesus. But they certainly can, if they want to, go into their Jewish roots. Nothing would stop them. But then you have another 100 or 200 years later, you have Constantine, the Council of Nicaea. Not only did they want to separate from their Jewish roots and merge more into advancing Yeshua, even through the pagan practices that were going on, but you also have the Jewish leaders who were sick and tired of these Messianic Jews and whom they continued to claim was a false Messiah. So you might say that Constantine and the leaders of the primary leaders of the Jewish movement. And by this time, they were establishing rabbinic yeshivas that were outside of Judea because they were kicked out. By this time, you have the Jewish leaders and Constantine in somewhat agreement. The Jews didn't want anything to do with Jesus, the Jewish leaders. Constantine didn't want anything to do with Jews, and they had kind of an agreement on their hands, an implicit agreement. And then from then you get the separation of the Jewish system, the Jewishness that Yeshua came to fulfill, to highlight, to really show us how to live out Torah in the way that reflects God's merciful heart. And what happens? It changes. The message changes because people running the show are in agreement. That's my 2 cents.
I'm taking all kinds of notes here. You got me going, brother. You got me going here.
Well, and there will be a test on this, Mark.
Yeah, good. That's fine. I got my notes. All right. Larry, anything? I got a couple things here.
My internet is down, and I'm trying to get my phone.
Okay. I'll start off with this.
Yeah, you do that.
First of all, the way I read the history, and I've got 3 books on Constantine and everything. Really, Constantine was not that big a deal. It was his mother. His mother was the big deal, and he was more her pansy, anyway. My question is, first of all, you said the Jewish roots of their faith. Whose faith? So the Gentiles are coming into the synagogues, is what we're talking about, and more, but they didn't have Jewish roots. So is that what you're talking about? I want to be more clearer on
no,
Jewish
I'm
roots.
I'm talking about the Jewish roots of faith in Yeshua. I don't see how one can separate faith in Yeshua from what he came to fulfill.
Oh, I get that. I get that. I understand that. I'm just saying, back in Yeshua's day, when you're talking about Gentiles, more Gentiles were coming in, they didn't have Jewish roots.
Absolutely not. They didn't.
Yeah. So it's the Jewish roots of whose faith? That the Jews' faith is understanding more. So when they went into the synagogue, they understood. I'm kind of confused here. So in Acts 15, it talks about the Gentiles coming in, and it gives the things that they should look towards, which is basically just study Torah, find Torah. I mean, all the different things that they're listing off there and everything. It's just more of, learn about Torah, come and be a part of that. So when you're talking about, okay, sorry, I'm just clicking to this. So in those days, in Yeshua's days, those that believed in Yeshua as Messiah in those days, coming to synagogues, they already knew their Jewish roots. And that's one of the reasons they believed that Yeshua was the Messiah, was because of that. I'm just trying to clarify here, because we have a lot of Gentiles as that progressed, like Acts 2. Acts 2, now that word is getting out not only to people, that came, all the people that came there, but it's getting out to the Gentiles now. And they're mixing, and that was one of Paul's big deal, is mixing like the statues to all their gods. All they were doing were entering in the Jews' God with their gods and mixing all this together. And that's about half of all of Paul's teachings, is trying to balance all that out. And so Those people, of course, don't have Jewish roots, but they're learning through Paul's teachings and his letters and everything about Jewish history and why Yeshua is the Messiah. I'm just trying to walk through this just to make sure I'm clear on what I understand is how that works.
I think.
Go ahead, Larry.
I think the Jewish roots has to do with the Jewish roots of the apostles' teaching. They had to be clear that the apostles were teaching from the Torah, because there was no, quote, New Testament. So the Gentiles had to know where this teaching was coming from. And that's why James said, is not Moses taught every Sabbath? So besides the things I gave you that we all agreed upon, make sure that you go to synagogue every week, because that's where the apostles are teaching from. So that's the Jewish roots, the Torah. But soon there began, well, like we said, there began to be more Gentile believers. And I think one of the things that Paul was stressing is you're no longer a Gentile. You have become part of Israel. But that was kind of looked down upon after a couple. And besides that, what David points out is with the crushing of the rebellions, the Jewish rebellions, the first rebellion, second and third rebellion, the Jewish leaders started putting rules in where you couldn't, like with the Bar Kokhba rebellion. One of the rabbis said that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah, and that didn't go over well for the ones that believe that Yeshua was the Messiah. So things like the Amidah, they put in a curse on those people that believed that Yeshua was the Messiah. And that was one of the ways that they would get people out of the synagogue, because they would not say a curse on themselves. So there's the division between the Jewish and the Jewish leaders who were in charge of the synagogues, and the Jewish believers believed in Yeshua as the Messiah. So there's one of the tenets of division there.
Good.
Yeah, good. That's
it's
good.
All part of it, yes.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that from the basis that everything that Yeshua said, all the words that came out of his mouth and what he came to do, was not to start something new.
Yeah.
What he came to do was to bring Jews back to a place of repentance of the heart, because the sacrifice of idols for sin, the sacrifice of animals for sin would not even work, would not even be accepted by the Lord unless the heart of repentance was behind it.
Right.
So what Yeshua came to do was to clarify everything that the Father was trying to establish at Mount Sinai when he gave Torah. He was simply trying to bring Jewish people back, not forward to something, but back to a very pure faith of relationship with God through the Torah. The Torah was God's love letter to mankind as to how to get closer to him. And Yeshua came to fulfill that message, to bring it home, and to tell people, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your brother as yourself. On these two, all the commandments hang. And if he keeps telling everybody, if Yeshua is saying, if you love me, keep my commandments, I don't even know how many times he said that phrase. But if you love me, keep my commandments, then when commandments are thrown out, does that mean they can truly love Yeshua the way he wants to be loved? I think it's pretty important that people are rooted in the things that Yeshua came to uphold and to show us how to live them out with righteousness and mercy going hand in hand.
I think one of the
Right.
goals of Yeshua was to bring the Jewish people back to the purity of following Torah so that they could fulfill their destiny of being a light to the nations.
Yes.
Because if they're not following Torah the right way, if they've got all this religiosity going on, they can't be the light to the nations. So Yeshua's ultimate goal was to reach the whole world through the Jewish people, and they were mucking that up. But you couldn't tell the rabbis that. You couldn't tell the Pharisees and the Sadducees that, because they had their way of doing it. You're wrong.
Yeah, but didn't God already know that?
Yeah.
Before Yeshua was even born, didn't God know that once he grew up and he started his ministry, even at 12 years old, don't you think God knew that that was bound to happen? That the authorities within the Jewish, hierarchy were all going to come against him and the whole thing, and yet he needed Yeshua to make a stand and come and be visible. It's the way I kind of see it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, all the different things we're talking about here, of what happened during Yeshua's time. I as you guys are talking about it, as we're talking about it, I'm visualizing that about everything we say of Yeshua's time is actually happening today, spiritually and physically, but in today's culture. And that's one thing I've had to learn, and it, to me, it answers so many questions, is that word culture. The way they did things and had to make things happen in their way and everything. That's why I'm seeing as the hierarchy. You could almost place the Jewish people today, taking the scenario of Yeshua's time to today, you could almost say the Jewish people are Christianity today, and we as Messianics are kind of a form of Yeshua, of which that's what he wanted in the first place, was to amplify Yeshua and be like Yeshua and go out and do what Yeshua commissioned us to do. But it's interesting that what so many of us are trying to do is to balance out what's already there. And I think that's what Yeshua came to do, was within the Jewish system, which is the only system that acknowledged God, not the Greeks, not any other religion of the world. The Jewish system is the only one that acknowledged the actual real God, is that they had control over things, and Yeshua came to clarify. That's like Matthew 6. My brain always goes, when we're talking about clarifying or balancing, I always go to Matthew 5 and 6, the Beatitudes, or whatever they you want to put on it. It's him trying to balance. It's not that you're wrong, you're just going in a different direction with the right message. And it's the same today. We realize the truth of what their culture and what Yeshua's message was trying to get across. And here we are today, not heading, but having the biggest, I don't know, used to be Christianity was the biggest religion in the world. I don't know that they are anymore, with as much as the Muslims are growing and growing and growing. But here we are confronting the people of the Christian belief system to try to help them balance out what they already spiritually know. They spiritually know Yeshua and God, but they're physically acting out something that God never set up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same thing back in Yeshua's day. The Jews, the hierarchy of the Jews, God set up the system of Torah. They turned it into, the fences. They turned it into their own documents, their own, so you won't violate Torah kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what was dominant. That was, what their system was. And Yeshua came to balance that out. That's kind of the comparison that I see when listening to what you guys have been talking about, back in that history. We're going through the same thing today. There's nothing different about it. It's just a different culture. The culture of the religion is different.
I agree with that. And you know what else is the same? Back in Yeshua's day, he picked people as his apostles that were uneducated, a bunch of working class people, and they were being rejected by all the scholars, all the rabbis, all the Pharisees, all the lawyers, all of them saying, who are these people? And what right have they got to say what's going on? Well, is that not what's going on today too? I mean, how many of us are from the seminary? How many of us are scholars? How many of us are historians? I read an article last night from the Biblical Archaeology Review, and it blew my mind about what they're saying. They never mentioned that the last Passover that Yeshua did was a Seder, other than saying that, well, that was someone's interpretation of what was going on. Whoever wrote Matthew, whoever wrote Luke, whoever wrote John, they were trying to connect it up with Jewish roots, which was never what Yeshua intended to do. And these are the people that come against the Messianic movement, saying, you don't know what you're talking. Who are you guys? Look at our teachers. Look at our most notable teachers. None of them have seminary degrees.
That's true.
But they're bringing thousands of people worldwide to Torah observance. How is that happening?
Well, it reminds me of something I heard in my 37 years of teaching public high school. Teachers in the workroom would complain about, kids today. One teacher came in, he said, I don't know why you're all so worried. We do the best we can. We let the economy sort it out. And in the same way, it's true of the Lord. Mm-hmm. People are doing what they think is right and how to interpret their belief system. And in the end times, God's just going to sort it all out. And he is the economy of our religion, and I wouldn't even call it religion. I don't like to call it religion. I want to call it our belief system. You guys bring out some good points. For those of you that, I just want to clarify a little bit about the fences that Mark talked about for some of you listening who may be kind of new to what's going on. So the rabbis wanted to make sure that the Torah was being followed, and they would make, let's call them extra strong statutes. God did give Moses a command to appoint people to work out the tough issues of Torah for the sake of unity and community. And it should be people who were really, really attuned with God. And so you have certain statutes that they ordered the people to do. For instance, not doing any work on the Sabbath means really, if you're primarily an agrarian worker, you don't plow your fields, you don't sow your seed, you don't do all those things that you would do. But it doesn't preclude you from going out and picking a husk of corn for a meal, from having a meal. And so that was interpreted as an extra statute. And that's why they criticized Yeshua, and he called him on it.
Yeah.
The washing of the hands, the washing was supposed to be before you offer your sacrifice at the temple. You were supposed to be fully mikvahed or cleansed, immersed, as a sign that you were serious. You wanted to be clean before the Lord. And what do? They turned it into another fence law that says you have to wash your hands. You have to be immersed before every meal you take. And Yeshua called him on that one. You can look it up. It's in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament.
Yeah.
So these are the fences that Yeshua came to say, let's get back to the basics of what our Father gave us at Sinai as a group. He gave us a beautiful document that should be the way to live for all mankind.
Yeah.
People weren't doing it. The leaders weren't doing it. He sent me to deliver the world and to show them how to do this. And, of course, because the system had to involve the propitiation of sin through the blood of an animal sacrifice, I myself am going to send my own sacrifice so that it will cover you even when the temples are destroyed and you can't offer a blood sacrifice. I'm still going to cover you. God knew exactly what was going to happen, and he wanted to bring people into a deeper love and understanding of who he is.
I love it.
One thing I want to move on to is the spiritual component. And I thought the other day, what's coming into my head can't be a mere coincidence. Why do we have the spread of a Christianity that's getting more and more devoid of its Jewish roots? Christianity at the same time that we're getting the spread of Jews in the diaspora, Jews that are going throughout the world, being blown to the four corners of the world because they're not wanted anywhere they go. They go into every country in the world, and at the same time, you have Christianity through missionaries going into every corner of the world. That can't be a coincidence. There's got to be some plan that God foresaw why there were going to be Jews in every country who don't have Jesus, and then you have Christians in every country who don't have Torah. What do you guys make of this? Could it be more than coincidence? Is there a spiritual plan here somehow?
Interesting. Good question. Real good question. In what you were talking about before you switched here, though, in that and the different ordinances and all of that, they actually made we need to do harder. I believe Yeshua came to say that it's actually simple. You know, that's what Matthew 5. You've heard, if you'll just do Torah, it's pretty simple. And I mean, even in Deuteronomy, what is it, 29:30?
You still there, David?
Torah is not too hard for you, you know, but yet the rabbis decided they needed the control.
Mm-hmm.
Is he freezing for you, Larry?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was going to bring that back into what you were just talking about, and now I've lost it.
The spread of Jews and Christians simultaneously throughout the world.
Yeah. It's just the same as today. I don't know exactly what it was, but anyway, I got into it. Sorry, I got into it. I know it'll come back to me.
Well,
I just turned 70, by the way, and I'm 71. So, you
know. I'm only a month behind you, so don't give me that.
Moses was 80 when he started his ministry, and Abraham was 75. So,
yeah.
They forgot things too. So, sorry. Go ahead.
My contribution to this, I just forgot now. The apostles, when they went out to Jewish communities, every one of them. I mean, the Jews were dispersed all the way to India. by that time. And I think it was Thomas who
Yeah.
was the apostle that went out to India, the subcontinent of India. So it was still a Jewish thing, let's say, during the time of the apostles. Now John was the last apostle to be alive. He made it all the way up to the 90s, I think. And his apostles, his disciples, they carried on what John taught that Yeshua brought to him. But after that generation, that's when you have this amalgamation of the Gentile world and the Jewish synagogues. From my study of history, the synagogues that were spread out all over Europe, they became very Hellenized. They honored the philosophies, and again, the scholarship became more important than doing the right thing for Torah, and you had that problem, and that's when in my estimation, that's when we had problems, when scholarship becomes so important to the leaders of a congregation that their heads are puffed up. They want to know more knowledge, more knowledge, more knowledge, worldwide knowledge, not just of their own culture. And that's when the blending starts and you got problems.
I like it. Wow. All right. Very good. Very good. I do remember now. Your question was more about, I think, why is Christianity, why are so many people so heavily going out? Is that kind of really what the question was?
Yeah, is it more than coincidence? You have Jews and Christians going out to all the countries.
Well, that's what I was trying to, when I was talking about how, it was made simple. In other words, the Jews made it hard. Yeshua was trying to make it simple. I think that's what Christianity has done. They've taken the Torah prophets and writings out, though they're still there. They've taken them out, and it's all just the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, to make it simple for people so that people don't have to follow a law. They don't have to know Torah and all that. All they have to do is spiritually, we know who Jesus is and we love Jesus. Wouldn't you like to love Jesus too? And then your life is going to be so much better and so much easier and all this because you're now a Christian. And that's the way I foresee Christianity, is they don't want the burden of having to know the law and follow the law. They want it just like bubbly and nice. It's kind of like the difference. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably should mention this. Difference between.
Oh, you froze, Mark.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, just as you were going to say that.
The difference between what?
Maybe he shouldn't say it. The Lord's freezing him up.
You're freezing again.
Freezing again? Oh, there. How about now?
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay. Well, no, I actually did eventually say it, but I should.
Oh, you just froze again.
He's having his breeze.
I got to know what you were going to say.
Okay. Tell me when I'm, and I'll finish it up. So
it's just the difference between something and something, but we never got to something.
Yeah, that's it, between Harris and Trump.
Oh. Well, I do. When I posed the question, why is this coincidence? Which I'm coming to learn every day. Coincidences are not really coincidences at all. is that when the Bible talks about, when Yeshua talks about the fulfillment of the Gentiles, he's not talking about numbers. We're not talking about 8 billion as being the fulfillment of the Gentiles, if they all convert. What we're talking about is people who Yeshua know we're going to separate from Torah. The fulfillment of the Gentiles is when their walk comes back to a rootedness of what Yeshua came to bring. That's the fulfillment. And when they realize, like all of our listeners, why was the Shabbat abandoned? Let's go back to it. Because God said, these are my appointed feast days. And so when the Christians worldwide really fully understand that and what Yeshua came to bring, that's the fulfillment of the Christians. But for them to learn more about their Judaism, they're going to have to grab the hem of the garment of a Jew. And let me tell you something. Jewish people worldwide, especially Jews, older Jews, that still remember some collusion between some churches and Adolf Hitler and the Holocaust, that older Jews want nothing to do with Christianity. Mm-hmm. When Christians tell Jews you don't need Torah, all you need is Jesus, like they're not going to hear any other words you have to say, because they know that is a falsehood.
Yeah. And
so what the fulfillment of the Christians are going to go hand in hand with the Jews who are in the countries throughout the world. When especially Messianic Jews and Messianic Gentiles who've been living in the faith that Yeshua came to bring, the true and deep faith that he came to bring, that it's also spread throughout the world. When Christians worldwide are going to be fulfilled in that way, they want to hear from people who've already been doing it. So you're going to have all of not only Jews worldwide who know about it, but you have people grafted in to Israel, the Commonwealth of Israel, grafted in, who have a true love and honor of the Torah that Yeshua came to fulfill to its highest calling. And so I think that I'm answering my own question, which my wife says I do all the time. And that I think Jews and Jewish side by side. So when one has the questions, the other group can not only answer those questions, but say, this is surely the fulfillment of what our prophets came to bring, because we have all of these Christians who are now turning towards Torah. Where does Yeshua fit in? Their hearts are going to be plucked, and I believe it's going to usher in Yeshua's return.
Very good. Very good. So if I walked up to in Jerusalem, I walk up to an older rabbi, and I walk up and I grab his seat and I say, I want to go with you. Will he know what I'm talking about?
Oh, he absolutely will.
I know he will. So what would his response be? Of course,
I will tell you, because it happened on my last trip to Israel. My very good friend Andy, who was born a Catholic, but for the last, I believe, 40 to 45 years of his life has been a messianic. He even converted to Judaism, but leaving that aside, he's become a messianic, a Gentile / Jew, if you will, someone who's grafted in. And he went up to an ultra-Orthodox rabbi when we were doing our missionary trip to Israel last month. And he said, I just want you to know that I am a Christian. And he wanted to use that term. He says, but I love Torah and I'm rooted in Torah. And that is the only way for us to practice our faith, is to be rooted in Torah. And this very old rabbi, who was wearing the classic long black garb with the hat and a very long beard, he just smiled and he said, that's really good. He said, you keep doing what you're doing. This is what Torah is all about. He knew that for Christians to understand that Yeshua wants them to understand the Torah, that they, by adopting Yeshua, They adopt the living Torah, the living word. That's why he's called the living word. And so it worked. It's worked for this one old Jewish rabbi. He understood it.
That's a good story. Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. I like it. Very good. All right. Good.
I heard a good teaching on the Haftorah for last week from Hosea. And one of the things that this teacher shared with us was that on his trips and others that he's known, his trips to Israel and talking with the rabbis, that they hold it in their hearts that the Messiah is going to bring people to the Torah. That is their understanding of what the Messianic world is going to be like. The Messiah is actually the one who's going to bring the world to Torah. And the Gentiles, in my world, the former Gentiles that have taken on the Torah, the reason why they're doing that is because of Yeshua. And so the more, my idea that came across to me as I was listening to this teaching was, the more former Gentiles that get drafted in and follow the Torah, the more that the Jewish leaders are going to see that it's Yeshua who's bringing these people into Torah understanding. And therefore, they're going to understand that, maybe Yeshua was the Messiah and is the Messiah. And the other thought I had was all this outreach, because I was involved with outreach to Jewish people, all this outreach in getting people to become Christians is useless to me, because they're bringing them into a Christianity which does not acknowledge the Torah. So this to me is a move of the Spirit on behalf of the Jewish people. Bringing Gentiles into Israel because of Yeshua is more of a testimony than going out and trying to get Jewish people to become Christians.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow, I'm still processing that. That's interesting.
That's beautiful. Yeah. My wife and I have done many. We've been asked to do many Seder services, Passover Seder, at churches. You know, it's not just they come and join us at the big venue that we rent for our congregation when we want to have a Passover Seder, but we are called, and they ask us, what do we have to do to set up, to prepare the table for Passover? We give them a very specific list. They say, yeah, we can do it. And they do it, and we take them through a Passover Seder. It's a Messianic Passover Seder with a Messianic Haggadah. So it's the basic Haggadah, but it's got some lines mixed in from the Brit Hadashah, the New Covenant, which refer to everything that's said in the Haggadah can be shown to come through Yeshua's words. Yeah. And so when people, I've never seen a Christian untouched in their heart walk away from a Seder, a true Seder, and a Messianic Seder, and to be untouched in their heart. Yeah. And I know it's just it's a spark that's lighting a fire. You know, well, what other things? That's the first question. Gosh, what other things have I missed all my life? I want to keep doing this Passover Seder every year. Mm-hmm. They want to do it. And they wonder, what other things have I missed? Well, if they just come back to the 7 major feasts, which God said, these are my appointed days, they're for everybody, you know, then what we have is a movement going on around the world that is just going to continue to grow. Yeah. My testimony is that's how I became Messianic, was through the Passover. Really? That's how I got married too, because my wife was doing the Passover with her girls separately. And then when she moved up to North Carolina, she continued it, and we got together. And one of the things that we found out that we had in common was we were both doing a form of the Passover.
And that led then to our marriage, and that led to following or doing Shabbat. And then after that came the Moedim. So yeah, and we did that with, we were high in the hierarchy of our church that we were going to. We were involved in the choir and leaders in the choir and stuff like that. And we would invite people to our Seder, our family Seder. And we would have like 12, 15 people at our Seder. And we tried doing it. And the first initial response was, well, that's very interesting. That's pretty cool. And the more we did it, though, the newness of it wore off, and they came up with all kinds of excuses. Well, this is going to get in the way of our practicing for the Easter cantata and stuff like that. And it just dropped away. And it's like, it was very disappointing for us after 5 years. I mean, and now they don't even talk to us now. So,
Wow. I'm sorry.
I've been right there, brother. Right there.
But my point was that the spark there is what brought me to it. Yeah. And again, it's got to be an openness on the part of a person. Their heart has to be ready. Otherwise, it's just a novelty.
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead, Mark. You go.
I've always thought this. I'm not just a reader of the Bible, especially the New Testament. I'm not just a reader. I like to look past the words and put myself in that place. And I have thought many times, there were 5,000 that Yeshua fed, and they were all over the place. Then he got in a boat and went somewhere. Where did those 5,000 go? Did those 5,000, were all those 5,000 completely changed and completely saved or whatever, and they went back to their houses and started telling everybody else about the Messiah? I don't think so. I don't think it's any different than the 5,000 that literally stood there and listened and put their eyes on the Messiah, went away completely changed. And it's the same today. You can get people that say, that's fascinating, that's interesting, wow. I even talked to two of my very close best friend brothers in my church back in the day when we were first starting to talk about this and learning about it. And I talked to both of them about stuff that they didn't know because they have not studied Torah and how it applied to New Testament. Both of these brothers, 2 different times, not together, they both had tears in their eyes. Both of them had tears in their eyes, walked away, and never asked me about it again.
Wow.
And I've run into so many people, and it's not indifferent than what it was in Yeshua's time. No. They walked away from him too. And anyway, that's what we're doing, is comparing here. So Dave, I interrupted you. Go ahead, brother.
No, I was just fascinated by that for any of our listeners on the network who are new to lambnetwork.tv, if the thought entered your mind, well, what about communion? If communion really started, if the first communion was at a Passover Seder, then isn't it enough for us that we just do communion? Isn't that like doing a Seder in itself? And I'd have to say, no, it's not. Doing communion as often as you do it is biblical. It's true. It's good. But the Passover Seder is really talking. The whole reason for the Passover Seder is that God takes people out of bondage to remember what he did for Israel. That's why it's reminded all throughout the Torah. Remember that I took you out of Egypt. It's not just a physical place, but everybody's got an Egypt in their lives. Everybody's got a type of bondage. It could be a cultural bondage that they're not aware of. Everybody's got a type of a bondage that God wants them delivered from to come into newness of life through his Messiah, and come into and understand what holiness is all about. You know, we hear a lot about grace in churches, but do we hear about holiness? And I think we need to hear more about holiness. There's so much holiness that's in the Torah. I think a lot of the cultural aspects of Christianity was like, we're being overloaded with holiness, like, but we have grace. We have grace. Why do we worry about the holiness aspect? I know this is taking it in a kind of a different direction.
No, this applies.
And we've only got 4 minutes left.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
But maybe we'll have some future ideas that are coming out of this hour today. And one of them is, why do we need holiness if we've got grace?
And what is holiness?
Yeah, I'm writing it down.
It's that T-shirt I just threw away.
No, that's holy.
Oh.
That's got holes in it.
It's totally less. Let's put it that way. All right. Well, like he said, we have about 2 or 3 minutes here. Famous last words. Anybody at all? It's just,
I think we've just scratched the surface of what happened in the last 2,000 years between Yeshua's message and what we got today.
Uh-huh.
I mean, just think about it. 2,000 years of straying away.
Yeah. And
2,000 years of taking those straying aways and putting them as doctrines. That's the whole problem. Doctrines. Doctrines that go against Torah. Doctrines that are made up, like Our Lady of Guadalupe. And what is that all about?
It's Virgin Mary Day.
The Mexican kids that I taught, they had no idea what it was about, because I asked them, well, what virgin is this? I go, it's the Virgin of Guadalupe. Oh, is that Jesus's mom? No, this is the Virgin of Guadalupe. I got that so many times. It's like,
really?
Okay. And I stick with this, that 90% of American Roman Catholics do not know what their church teaches. If they did, they wouldn't just be nominal, they'd be out of there, like me. Yeah.
And Judaism was not the only religion back in those days.
Right.
That's why I keep, it's real prevalent to me that I love to think of what we know about back in Yeshua's day and compare it to today. It's just fascinating to me. I think it's not that much different, to tell you the truth. I think the culture's basically the same, the whole thing. I think it's the same as it was back in those days. And here we are, 2,000 years later. And here we are. We're going to go into the next section here. We're going to let David teach his Torah, and then Larry and I are going to go, yes, David, yes, David, you're so good, David, yes, David. No, okay, we're not going to do that. Okay.
No, we're going to be like the rabbis. We're going to pull and push each other back and forth.
That's it. I like that. Okay. Push and shove section next coming up. We'll see you there.
My way's bad, my way is so bad. Your way's good, your way makes me glad. My way's bad, my way is so bad. Your way's good, your way makes me glad. Torah, Torah.
Amen, amen. Shabbat shalom to all of you. I'm wearing my my hat that Mark he covets so highly, And I really should have a menorah on the top, so it looks like a giant kippah, but not quite yet. I am Rabbi David Weiss of Malchut Chaim Messianic Congregation. I'll try not to bend down like this because then all you see is my hat. And but I am here today to talk about Parsha Vayishlach. Vayishlach, which means "and he sent out." And it's taken from Genesis, Bereshit, chapters 32 to 36. And it's a fascinating look. And I think one of the most fascinating, I think he might be the most fascinating of all the three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're taking a look at a seminal moment in Jacob's life when his name is changed to Israel. And it all begins with a wrestling match that he's in. It's such a fascinating thing. And unlike Abraham, whose name was changed from Avram to Abraham, and he was never, ever referred to as Avram again. And then you have Isaac, whose name was never changed. Now we have Jacob, whose name is changed from Jacob to Israel, comes out of this wrestling match. And he's referred to 39 times after this point as Israel and 35 times as Jacob. I'm OCD, I counted. So what was this wrestling match all about? And how come his name is changed to Israel, but he's often referred to as Jacob time and time again? Excuse me. Let's take a look at just this short, these few verses which describe what's going on. Jacob is between a rock and a hard place. He's run away from Laban. He's been told by God, go back to the country that I gave to your forefathers. You are to go back there, back to the land of your father Isaac. And so he's going back, and yet there's a roadblock because Esau, the man who kind of led him to run away and escape in the first place, his own brother, who's insanely jealous of him and is mad because Jacob deceived the father in getting the blessing. Esau is coming to meet him, his 4 wives, and his 11 children. And Jacob is terrified, even though God said, I will be with you wherever you go. So it starts out in verse 10, 32, Genesis 32:10. Then Yaakov said, God of my father Abraham and God of my father Yitzhak, Adonai, who told me, return to your country and your kinsmen, and I will do you good. I'm not worthy of all the love and faithfulness you have shown your servant, since I crossed the Jordan with only my staff. But now I have become 2 camps. And he says that because he sent one wife, Leah, ahead of him, and Rachel's behind him with their kids, just in case Esau attacks one, the other, and the other children will probably survive. And so he says, now I've become 2 camps. Please, he's speaking to God, please rescue me from my brother Esau. I'm afraid of him, afraid he'll come and attack me without regard for mothers or children. You said, he's talking to God like all of us have spoken to God and even pointed a finger. You said, I will certainly do you good and make your descendants as numerous as the grains of sand by the seas, which are so many they can't be counted. You said it, Lord. So Yaakov took his 2 wives, his 2 slave girls, his 11 children, and he sent them across the stream along with his possessions. And Yaakov was left alone, and then some man wrestled with him until daybreak. And when he, that is Jacob, when he, the man, saw that he did not defeat Yaakov, he struck Yaakov's hip socket so that his hip was dislocated while wrestling with him. The man said, let me go, it's daybreak. But Yaakov said, I won't let you go unless you bless me. You see, even though his hip is dislocated, Yaakov is holding on to the man and won't let go with his hands. The wrestling match continues. The man asked, what's your name? And he answered, Yaakov. Then the man said, from now on, you will no longer be called Yaakov, but Israel, because you have shown your strength to both God and men and have prevailed. Yaakov asked him, please tell me your name. But he answered, why are you asking my name? And he blessed him there. Yaakov called the place Peniel, face of God, because I have seen God face to face, yet my life is spared. Now, what reminded me of this wrestling match and what was going on, and why does he see him as a man at first and he doesn't see him as God at first, but later on he realizes he's God? Does he think that perhaps Esau came in and he's wrestling with Esau? Is it a strange man who Esau sent? Is he an enemy or he's a friend? And the funny thing is when he realizes it's not an enemy, but it's someone who's holy, who's sent by the God who said, I'll always protect you and be with you. He wasn't going to let go of this godly agent until the godly agent blessed him. Now, if he really was craving this blessing, it must mean that the blessings that God said he was going to have, he's not feeling them. Have we all been there where we're told you're going to lead a blessed life now that you have a belief in Yeshua Mashiach and you're grafted into Torah? Everything about your life should be hunky-dory. But everything's doesn't feel hunky-dory all the time. You remember what it was like as an early believer, the first time you faced a really big trial after you became a believer. And man, it knocked you for a loop, didn't it? And you're wondering, like, wait a minute, is this supposed to still be happening to me? I have a God now that I believe in, that I know is true, who protects me. Why am I still going through this major trial? And I think Yaakov was right there with you. I think his wrestling match was a wrestling with God. Is why do I still have trials and worries when you have declared that you're my God and you'll be with me? Reminds me of one of my favorite groups, Turnpike Troubadours, who were kind of a country and Americana band. One of the lines from one of their songs is, I've never seen a problem that I couldn't outrun. And I think Jacob's been there. He's been so engrossed with running from his problems all of his life that I don't think he's ever thought, I need to just stop running. God is with me, and I'm not going to let this guy go until he blesses me in a way that I really fully understand it. I think God was telling him, life is a struggle. Life is like a wrestling match. But I'm saying you don't have to struggle alone. You can struggle with me, El Shaddai, the God who sustains. I offer you a life, sharing struggle with me. And in order to signify that, I will change your name. It's not just a plain name change. He didn't change Yaakov to Todd or to Taylor or to Skylar. He changed his name to a brand new identity. It's okay to strive with God. It's okay to strive with God because God allows it, and God will make sure that you fully understand him, that you will win when you tie your life to God. And so I want to bring in my two friends. And I want to start by asking you guys, before you ask me a lot of questions that I know you, Mark, especially, you take a lot of notes. And what I want to ask you about is, have you guys ever have you all wrestled with God about some things throughout your long life as believers?
Oh yeah.
No.
You lie.
Let's start with the, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. One of the things that I struggled with was the destruction of my marriage. I mean, what the heck? Here I am. I love you. I love her. What the heck? and that was a major struggle. But at the same time, if I didn't have faith in the God of creation through his son, Yeshua, I would have never made it through. I would have just rejected everything. I was like, yeah, da 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 da, up to that point. Maybe that's why it happened, but everything was great. And then that happened, and it's like, woo. But he saw me through that. He strengthened me. I raised my two sons by myself, and eventually found another woman, and God has blessed me with her. And I look back and there's nothing happened major in my life. But since you brought that up, I did wrestle with the Lord on that situation to tears. And I found a solace in the Psalms. I had a friend who, excellent musician, and he sent me all these tapes about based with the putting the Psalms back to music and stuff like that. And I just wore that tape out, and he took me through it.
Very cool.
Thank you for sharing that.
Everybody's different. I guess I always we've had similar discussions. I have had similar discussions over and over many times, and I always start off my response as I'm a realist. Okay, I don't live in a spiritual world, a cognizant spiritual world. I don't think about those things. I don't go there. And so my life is regulated by the literal written word. In other words, I go by that. I don't use the spiritual end of it in my even my thought pattern. So in that, I have not once ever, and as God is my witness, I have never once ever got mad at God, blamed God for anything, none of those things, never wrestled with him, never had an argument with him or anything like that, because I realize that the things that happen in my life are because of my doing, not because of God's doing. I am a huge, true believer in the fact that God will never put anything on me that I can't handle, and that he is not going to tempt me with things that would cause me not to have my faith. And so because I'm so solidly grounded, am I frozen? By the way, you got both of you guys you haven't moved in 3 minutes, and so
we're listening to your rap story.
I know. So within all of that, I don't even go there. So if things don't happen well, then for me, my thought process is, Lord, help me to realize where things are askew and help me to bring it back into where it needs to be. Because if things are not going well or something has happened, it's not because you put it on me. I can't even go there. I can't even think that. I can think that about a human being. I have no problem putting blame on people or accusing people of stuff and that type of thing. But when it comes to God, I just don't have that ability. And mostly it's being a realist. It's in me. I have to just know physically things are happening, things are going to happen. If I make a wrong decision and I don't know that it's a wrong decision, it's going to go a certain way. It doesn't mean God put it on me that way. I made the decision. And I think that's where God, to me, it's like AI. My thought of AI is Adonai influenced. And that's the way I live my life, is I want God to influence me, but I don't want God to control my life. You understand what I'm saying? I want it influenced, and I think God wants that. But it's the same thing as you can't be born a godly person. You want to get into all that stuff, But you see what I'm saying? I have to make that decision, and I have to realize that. That's me. I realize there are very few people out there that believe the same way I believe, but I have to be true to the culture within myself. And so these questions about wrestling with God and all that kind of thing, I just don't get into it. I just don't even.
Okay, let's talk about something more basic. That when you read the story about Jacob, Mark, and you read the story about Jacob, what have been your thoughts about him? About why he doesn't recognize God at first, but he's a man, and he doesn't see God until very late in the wrestling match, which could have been all night. It could have been at the end of the night, for all we know. Right. What have been your thoughts about why he doesn't recognize God at first?
Because he's not. I venture to say he's a little like me. He's living his life in reality, and that's why when this first happens, this is totally spiritual. If something like this happened to me, I would probably react the same way, because I'm not seeing it as spiritual. I'm seeing it as it's a vision. It's like, okay, now I need to look at this differently than I look at everything else in my life. Has Jacob ever had a spiritual encounter with God before this?
He did in the dream with the ladder, when he was running away from Esau towards Laban. He wasn't even married then, of course.
That's right.
He did have a dream, and he knew that God was more than just a vision, that God literally inserted himself in the dream, spoke to him, and spoke a truth that was going to carry him through the next 20 years of his life. And so he did have an encounter with God.
So my question is how would you react if this happened?
You mean the wrestling?
You're asking me what I think of Jacob. And also, let me add one other thing that I've learned through a long time ago, through the years in my early Torah studies, is that the name Jacob is used for his personal life and the things that involve reality and those things. Israel, when he's named as Israel, it actually is referring to that whole entity of Israel and how he amplifies Israel and that type of thing. So when you see it, what'd you say, 35 and 39? Interesting. They're really close.
Yeah, they are. But Israel wins out. Israel is mentioned 39 times.
I get it. But it's only mentioned when God wants the whole entity of Israel mentioned, because it's always going to talk of something in the future. It's something that involves the whole entity of Israel, not just Jacob. When it involves just Jacob and his family, they use Jacob. And if you'll go back and look through it, I did this years ago, that plays out. It exactly plays out. And I think it's the same thing with him, is that up until this point, he's seeing things as reality. And though he's already had one encounter with God, he's not fully convinced until he wrestles with God. He has a physical encounter with God. That's why the guy that he wrestled with became physical. It wasn't spiritual. He became a physical entity so that it would allow Jacob to see it from that, because that's the way Jacob saw things. He wasn't that big of a spiritual person to just, it's God. I'm wrestling with God. No, God had to make the entity a physical, real thing so that Jacob can relate to that. That's the way I see it. That's the way I've been taught, and I believe that's.
Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
Talk about the two encounters with God. I think of the first encounter with the ladder as being, whoa. I just got done watching the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation thing where the guy's lighting up his house. It's like boom, this
Yeah.
ladder is going up
Yeah.
and down. It's like "Wah." And then the second encounter is he's just got done putting a scheme together, splitting up his family. They crossed the streams. He's got that on his mind because Esau is coming in. He's like you said, Mark, he's been doing things all his life with his encounter with his father-in-law. He's been working on schemes all along just to make things go. He's in the midst of this again. He's trying to devise a way so that maybe one side of the family will survive, if not both, and he's laying there and some guy creeps into the camp and starts wrestling with him. And it's like, who is this guy? And he's not concerned with who is this guy. He's concerned with survival. So he's wrestling with him. But I think it's interesting that the guy does not identify who he is, but he says, what do you mean, who am I? And to me, that was, think back to the ladder. Who did you see at the top of the ladder? Look familiar?
That's good.
So
that's good. I like it. I like it. We got 5 minutes.
I want to bring something in that Larry just touched on, and is that, when you've heard the phrase, what's in a name, or everything's in a name. And so when the angel changes his name to Israel, the angel was there for a purpose. They say that when angels are sent out by God, they can even project God's voice and God's a face that people will recognize as God, if that's the way God wants it. And so I think that a name change is an identity change. It's that, Jacob, you're tied up in your personal problems. And I want you to know that your personal problems, there's something even bigger than that. And what's bigger than that is that I've put a calling upon you, that all of your children, you have 11 children for a reason, and it will be 12. You're going to have 12 children who are going to be just exploding in population. The land is going to receive this name. The people are going to be receiving this name. I'm giving them an identity. And I think when you look at the nation of Israel through the years, they've always been a nation that have kind of wrestled with God over many, many things. Wrestled with Torah. What does it mean? I think God wants us, in many ways, he wants us to be so involved with him that he can take us wrestling with him over trials in life, if you will. And so God plants this people group who are going to spend their whole eternity wrestling with him, and really wrestling with the world. And maybe the world is the man, and they realize, well, we're wrestling with God. I mean, I'm bringing in a whole lot of stuff here, but I just like the idea that God is okay with us wrestling with him, but we have to know that we are wrestling with the God of the entire universe, and he wants us to see that he's God. And maybe that will even affect the way we wrestle with him in the future.
I like it. I like it. Larry, last words. We got 2 minutes.
Well, I don't want us to be known as a misogynist.
Ooh.
So
Ooh.
Jacob had 13 children, 12 sons and one daughter. So I just want to make sure that we get that.
Good point, Larry.
Good one. That is good. I hadn't gone there. So that's good. All right. Well, good. Excellent. These are so good. I love it. I learned so much.
By the way, good job on the reading there, David. That was an excellent reading of that scripture passage. I mean, you put life into that baby.
I try to hear the voices of, and even the intonation of how we might have been speaking, and God, look, God is a big God, And he'd rather that we argue with him than we argue with human beings in a difficult way.
Of course.
He's pretty big. He can take it.
Yeah.
And not only can he take it, but I think God likes it when we're transparent with him. That's another important point here. Jacob's being very transparent, and God's giving him some answers.
That's good. That's real good. All right. We got an easy minute here. So, David, what's the deal with the hat, man?
Well, the hat, 50% of our heat leaves our body through our head. I'm not making this up. And so, we keep our house. We keep our house a comfortable 73. It's a little on the, we have 4 people that live in the house, and they all have different skin temperature or whatever. So we keep it on the little cool side, and the hat just, it's like turning up your thermostat 5 degrees when you put a hat on your head.
Yeah.
73 is a heat wave in our house.
I was going to say, that's actually warm, if you ask me.
Well, then I'll turn it up to 75 at night.
No
but
way.
then
No way.
we turn it up, but then we turn it back down to 73 when we're in bed.
Oh,
We're the opposite.
wow.
I like a cool house when we're sleeping.
It's not that anything over 65 is hot.
Oh,
Yeah.
God, 65.
Yeah. That's even lower for us for sleeping. Oh my gosh, yeah,
This
definitely.
is Southeast North Carolina.
Yeah, I know, but we don't have central air at all. Ours is radiator heaters and electric heaters and air conditioners in the window and that kind of thing. Our whole house is that way, so we don't even know what the temperature is in our house at any given point. So we just have to regulate. We got to go. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Have a great week. All right, here we go.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all other live Lamb Show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell somebody about the Messianic Lamb Network.
They should be white as snow, white as snow, white wool.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.